me a second. Here we go.
Yay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another Monday night guest speaker series. Tonight it's myself, Ailene Johnston, and Danny Morton. We both work for CodeU, so you are probably somewhat familiar with our names or faces, but I'll introduce myself briefly and then give Danny a chance to introduce himself before we dive right in. I'm one of the training coordinators, and I work specifically with the data analysis pathway. So we're working with Python, SQL, and then of course, data visualization. And yeah, I'll let you go ahead, Danny.
Hey everybody, I'm Danny Morton. I'm a technical project manager here. So I work with folks that graduate, and up until like the news of the program shutting down, we were doing a lot of work with nonprofits and building out solutions for them. But now I'm primarily working with folks that graduate to improve their project and start new projects as like an additional portfolio piece for when they're on the job hunt. So makes you more employable and everything like that, and we'll have you a nice strong project. So makes the job hunt a little bit easier.
Awesome. So tonight we're talking about storytelling with data. You might not really know what we mean by that, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, it will become clear. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Oh, let me make up my keys are clicking. Okay, so we're going to cover a lot. I'm not going to read all these out, but if you want to see a roadmap, we're going to talk a little bit about how our eyes see things. We're going to talk about creating this idea of a full story arc. We'll talk about types of charts, things to avoid in charts, ethics, integrity, accessibility, and then kind of just putting all these things together. And then after we sort of go through some information on the slides, we're going to have a lot of just fun interactive exercises where we pull up pictures of good or bad charts and collaboratively talk about what makes them good or bad and what we would fix with them. So why does it need a story, right? We have a bunch of numbers, and then somewhere inside all of those numbers, there's a story. So we have to figure out how to find it and tell that story. So that's really the core problem, right? So you don't need to necessarily just give the information to your audience, right? What you need to do is prompt them to make a decision or make an action, right? So we have these sort of three things in mind. You have context, clarity, and then very importantly, this call to action. What are they going to do with this, right? And they figure out what they're going to do almost subconsciously. It's not something that they're trying hard to think about, right? They're giving them the context. It's very clear when they look at the graph what you want them to see, and then just naturally they should have this feeling of like, well, what should be done? Oh, for some reason, every time I click over, sorry, my mouse isn't working. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how our eyes see things, right? There's a lot of different ways that our brain can process information, but these things are called pre-attentive attributes. That means that they are processed before there's any kind of conscious attention. It can take less than 250 milliseconds, right? And so before you even are reading the title of the graph, right, your brain has already subconsciously taken in a lot of information. You can see even over on this one, it talks about color, size, position, motion, intensity. Here's some examples where you can actually see it in the graph, right? So immediately, this long one is what sticks out. This thick one is what sticks out. I don't know if you guys can see my pointer when I'm pointing. Are you guys able to see when I'm pointing at things? Can you see this? Okay, cool. Just making sure, right? You can use size, shape. When it comes to things like color, we'll get a little bit more into that, but it's not only the hue, like the color itself, but it's the intensity, right? You could have a bunch of lighter things and one darker thing, right? You can group things together. With pre-attentive attributes, you can use more than one, right? But you don't want to use too many at the same time, or else it starts to lose its power. Here's a quick exercise. How many 8s are in this picture? A lot of you have probably seen this before, with the idea of like, okay, well, you can count the 8s. It's fine. It doesn't take that long, depending on how good your vision is. But now it's really easy, right? The second you make those 8s darker, or if we were to change the color of the 8s, they suddenly become very clear to see. And then also everyone would suddenly be like, oh, we're supposed to be looking at the 8s, for one reason or another. This is, of course, like a silly hypothetical thing, a little exercise. But it works like that on a graph too. If you had, like one line much darker than the other lines, your audience immediately thinks, okay, that's the line I need to pay attention to. That's what's important. Looking a little bit more in color, in case you weren't sure what I meant with hue, like you've got like the color itself. Is it green? Is it blue? Is it red? Right? Intensity, it's not just saturation. You also have ideas of like tint and shade, like how much white or black is in it. And these things are used for specific reasons when you're making your visuals, right? So this is actually one of the most common mistakes that I see in a lot of the early data visualizations, is that people use a sequential palette for categorical data, right? But if you have a sequential palette, when it's going from, meaning like from light to dark of the same color, it makes you think that it should have some kind of a natural ordering, that it's like the same thing, right? Doesn't it feel like, oh, suddenly this is less and this is more, there's more color there? That's what our brains are naturally going to think. When I see a bar chart where all of the different bars are these colors going on, it can be confusing because it's like, well, does the color mean anything at all, or is it just arbitrary, right? And most of the time, if they're categories, they're not using that color to mean something. And it's better just to have what's called a qualitative palette, just have totally different colors, right? If you're going to use different colors, or of course, you can just use the same color, which is often the best choice, unless it's like really important that they're a different color. And then of course, we see these diverging palettes a lot. I see those misused too. Like you want to think those are really useful when it diverges from a center point. If there's some kind of center value that you're looking at, less and then more than, then it's nice to use. We see these a lot of like weather maps and stuff. It makes perfect sense. The hot, cold makes, feels very intuitive for our brains. Okay. And so I like over here on this side, if you say every element must earn its place, if removing it doesn't lose meaning, remove it. Like that, if you remember anything else, remember this one right here. If removing it doesn't lose meaning, remove it, right? Every single thing in your chart should have a concrete purpose that it can't do without. And we have only a certain number of working memory slots in our brain. We can only take in so much at once, right? So you've got to think about, like, you want to reduce this cognitive load on your viewers. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to understand the meaning of your visual as quickly as possible, right? So if the chart type that you choose doesn't really make sense, if you have like an enormous legend because you have just too many things going on, if your axis labels are confusing, all these types of things increase the cognitive load. They're filling these ideas of this memory slot in your brain. And so just keep that in mind, right? When you're adding things to your chart, just make sure you need to add it. And when you're removing things, just figure out like how much can I remove? Does this chart still work without it, right?
A really helpful thing with it too is to really think about your audience. Because if you're, very well educated and you're making a chart for like a child, you might be like, oh, we can remove all these things, but the child might need those extra pieces to read the chart effectively. So keep that in mind while you're doing your charts.
Yeah, absolutely. This one, it talks a little bit about this like Gestalt principle. So like how it's just a little bit more about this idea of the science of visualization, right? Gestalt psychology was developed early 20th century, and it's just this idea of like, how do our brains naturally organize visual information into groups, and then how are we forming patterns by what we see? And the idea behind the Gestalt is that it's not like a learned behavior, it's just like hardwired into our brains. Like this is how humans perceive things. And that means that like the better we can understand this, it means that for almost everyone, it's going to work, for all people, regardless of like their background in this sense. I do want to say, like, as a caveat though, like what Danny said, the audience is probably primarily the most important thing. We'll get to that next for sure. But yeah, so like proximity just means like how close are they? Like if things are close together, they're going to look like a group, right? It's going to seem like they're supposed to be together. And you guys can read these here. Like, if they look similar, people are going to think they're related, right? Like think about how our eyes move across curves versus jagged lines, right? You can see some of these things here for like, hey, like, here's some things you can use instead. I also am going to point out, we're going to post this slideshow for you guys later. So don't worry too much about reading all this information on here because you'll have access to it after the workshop. That's kind of why I put so much information on it, by the way, not not so we can necessarily read it all here, but so that you can read it later. Okay, so very briefly, chart types and when to use them, right? That's another common mistake that you see, and it's going to be hard to tell an effective story if the chart type is misleading or confusing, right? This is something we're going to dig into this a lot more when we do our exercises and we start looking at good and bad charts. We'll see examples. So I'm going to kind of gloss across this, but the idea that there are certain charts that work best with, say, 2 numerical variables as opposed to 2 categorical variables. And by that, I mean, things, for those of you who maybe, I'll kind of backtrack. By qualitative things would be, like a category. If you have like maybe a zip code or, a genre of movie or something, right? And then quantitative, any kind of numbers, if you're like counting things or maybe a time or an age, things like that, right? All of them can be used for, sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. All of these charts have sort of the best preference for the types of data types that go with them. Okay. And then chart junk. And again, this is going to be, we're going to talk about this a lot after the slideshow, but wow, there are so many types of chart junk. Okay. For whatever reason, maybe starting back with like when Excel had all these nice little like effects that they started adding, to their charts, people started making like 3D pie charts and lots of crazy lines and borders and patterns, but it actually is just very distractive. So just in general, like, yeah, chart slop. Yeah, just in general, I mean, you really want to avoid, like we said, anything unnecessary. You never want to have heavy lines, like heavy grid lines, heavy borders around your bars, extra pictures that don't offer any data. 3D is always going to be a no-go. Here is an example of a very bad chart, right? And it's like, it could be worse for sure. But like a lot of times when you first create charts, like you get this crazy grid, right? You have a big border around the legend. You have all these like borders around the lines or around the bars, right? So like, this is pretty ugly, right? And we'll see a lot more examples of like ugly and pretty things later. But yeah, you can see like this is all chart junk. But what's funny about this one in particular is that even though it has all this unnecessary stuff, there's also a lot of necessary stuff that it's missing, right? Like there's no title, there's no data source. Like we don't know, I have no idea what these people want me to think about this data, right? Okay. Also, I'm going to pause for a second to say, I know I'm breezing through these, but if anyone has any questions at any time, please raise your hand and ask them. Like you won't be interrupting. This is a very informal thing that we're doing here. All right, so, and this will be a good list to have. You guys will have this list to kind of think about this decluttering process, right? For almost every chart you're going to do, these will be good rules to follow. It's not true 100% of the time, but it's a good starting point, right? Sometimes you might need a tick mark. That's why I says like, remove unnecessary tick marks. Like remove legends where possible. Sometimes you have to have a legend, right? So just be aware of your story, right? And so that's kind of what we're getting to now. And I know I kind of breezed past some hard and fast rules, but the idea is that in data storytelling, it's a story, and we mean that, right? Every chart that you make, it should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Like it should be a complete picture that someone who doesn't know anything about your data, someone who doesn't know you, right? Like this, I mean, unless you have like an intended audience that's like extremely technical, but even then, if it has, even if they have to know a little bit about, some kind of domain knowledge, they should still be able to understand completely what it is that you're trying to say, right? So what do we mean by the beginning? We mean context and the setup. So That means a title, maybe a subtitle, and appropriate access labels, right? That is the context of what the data is, right? Like the title itself will tell them most likely, very clearly, what it is you're trying to say. Right? What is the middle? The middle is the data, it's the visual. Okay, you're looking at your pre-attentive attributes and you're using those ideas to highlight important elements of the chart that fit your story. Like that's what you're trying to tell. Okay, and then you use that, it kind of like ties into this action point. Like, like what's the point, right? Like you're presenting this for a job, right? You have maybe some decision makers, stakeholders, whatever you want to call them. Like you're recommending to them that they take some type of action based on what you found in the data. Okay, so you've got to connect those dots, whether it's a call out, annotation, or something you're just saying, right? But like it should come pretty naturally. And there should always be this sort of the idea of like, and now what? Like, and so what, right? Like what's the point, right? That's, I always say, like, because sometimes, you know, you're just learning about something. It might not necessarily be that every person can take some kind of action, but they should at least, there should be a point to why are they looking at this? Like, why does it matter? Okay, so one thing we can look at are titles. A lot of times you see like really bland labels for your titles. You just take the variable, like, you know, head count by department, right? You have some kind of, you take the variable you're looking at, X versus variable Y, and you leave it there. And again, like that tells you, like, that gives you some context, but it doesn't give you like the purpose, right? So this says revenue by quarter, but then the story this person is trying to say is like, hey, this is the best quarter in 5 years. So they're pointing out Q4 revenue surged 34%, right? Arguably surge is a little bit of a kind of a strong word. I don't know. Like sometimes you want to avoid like super, you know, emotional sounding words like that. But the point is that it tells a story, right? Or like customer satisfaction survey, like, okay, well, so what? Right? Oh, satisfaction dropped 12 points, right? So like there's the context can be here, but the context is better here for what you're actually trying to discuss, right? It's good to have either some kind of declarative statement, or sometimes it's good to have a question, a leading question, like almost like you think about, you know, if you've watched like lawyer things, right? The idea of like a leading question for a witness, like that's like leading questions would be good for this, right? You ask the question, but it's trying to point people in a direction. And so it sounds like you really want to avoid sensationalizing anything. Yes.
Something really great with this too is with your intended audiences, like a lot of executives that I've done these for, like really high-end charts, half the time they don't even look at the chart. They just look at the title, and that's what they use to present that information to whoever they're presenting it to. And then somebody that's more into the visual will actually go and study that. So sometimes your executives are going to look at that, you know, oh, sweet, Q4 is 34% up over the last 5 years. Great. We can like go in that tangent off that on a talk. And then, you know, management under them might be really crunching the numbers and like, oh crap, like we didn't do good this quarter, but we were up here and our department's not holding true to that. So we got to work on that. But, you know, having it so various audience members can look at the visual and gain a lot of insight from it's really important.
Yeah, that's funny to say that. They're like, oh, titles. Yep, run with the title. I mean, it's true though. It's like you've got like the idea is that someone with very low attention span and very little time can still access your point, and someone with more time and interest can like spend a little bit more time looking at it and get a little more information from it. You know, you can have the best of both worlds. I'm reading the comments out. Yeah, that's funny. All right, cool. Let's see what do we have next here. Okay. Oh, these are just and you know, again, I'm not gonna like read through all of these, but again, it's just like some more tips that you can follow, right? Of like how to label things, you know, using a consistent style, that kind of thing. So I'll leave this for you to kind of read through that later. Okay. Next section is going to be integrity and ethics and data representation. It's a little bit of a turn. Are there any, I'm just going to kind of pause and open it up. Is there anything you guys want to ask about or talk about before we dive into this side? All right. Anything you wanted to add, Danny, before I move on?
No, not yet.
Okay, cool. It's kind of weird. I haven't done a presentation in a long time, so I hope I'm not talking way too fast. I know that's my tendency. So, like, I'm doing a lot of talking. Okay, cool.
You're doing great so far.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so people use data visualizations, right? We keep talking about this to tell a story, to prove a point. Well, not everyone is honest. So people also do these things to make people believe something that isn't actually true. And unfortunately, it's extremely common. You find it all over in the wild, including the biggest, most popular news sources, the biggest newspapers, news channels, online articles. You see it everywhere. People lie. Maybe it's not always intentional, but it might be. Either way, there is no excuse. So whether or not, like, that's, you have to take it upon yourself to have that awareness, and the responsibility is yours to be ethical and have integrity with your data. Not knowing that you can't do something isn't necessarily an excuse, right? So here's some big things that we see: a truncated y-axis. People do this. This is one of the most common ones. And I know it's actually the hardest one to accept. I've gotten to constant, probably half of the DA students in this class have heard me talk about it in class. People want to zoom in. You want to zoom in. You're saying, yeah, well, you can barely see the changes in this line chart. But when you like shorten the axis, then suddenly, you see these peaks and valleys. I'm like, yes, but it's not that dramatic, right? You need to start at 0. Because otherwise it's just misleading. If something is flat looking, it's okay for it to be flat looking. If it doesn't show that much detail, that's okay. There are instances, of course, if you want to show the original one and then kind of like take a little subset of the graph, like another box, and kind of zoom into that, right? That's okay. Right? Like you can, as long as you're like crystal clear to your audience, like, hey, this is zoomed into here to see these changes, but overall, these changes are mild, right? So a truncated y-axis is really big. The other huge one that we see all the time, correlation presented as causation. So probably a lot of you have heard that phrase, like, correlation does not imply causation. Correlation is when things, say, we did a study and we were tracking people's habits on something. I know a lot of you guys have done things like maybe smartphone habits or gaming habits or sleep habits. And you could say, oh, well, higher, maybe someone could say in this hypothetical data, say, oh, well, we saw that in instances of people who spent more than X number of hours gaming, they had less than adequate sleep, right? Like the correlation is showing that, like, oh, we see a pattern where people with these more gaming hours kind of have less sleep. That doesn't mean that gaming more causes less sleep, though, right? Causation means that it causes something, like it is the reason that it's happening. You will almost never be able to prove any type of causation with your data and your charts because the world is complicated and there are a lot of factors and variables out there in the world, especially if you have data that involves people. Right. So just be very careful, because you'll see it sometimes in like the titles of the charts and stuff. People will imply that, like, oh, video games cause violence. Look at these stats, right? But they don't, right? It's not, you might be able to find certain correlations, but that doesn't mean that one is causing the other. Another one, cherry picking. Not just time frames, but also just data sets. It could be locations. It's really just saying, like this is talking about time frames, but you're taking any of your variables and you're deciding, well, this section totally supports what I need. And even though, like, these regions aren't showing this, profit increases, they're actually decreasing, but maybe we'll just leave them out of the graph to make the graph look better, to make it seem like we're increasing, and they may or may not tell you that. It's extremely dishonest if they leave things out and don't tell you, right? And then again, with the scales, it's kind of similar to this one, right? It's if you have, say, two different line charts or two different things that are on the same, or two different plots on the same chart with very different scales, and you're trying to sort of like make one look really big and the other one really small. Gosh, there used to be there. I wish I could find it. There was one that was like a really good example that I'd seen before where it was kind of showing like an increase of one thing and a decrease of another, but the scales were so different that it made it seem like they were like extremely correlated, right? Like as one increase, the other decrease, but in reality, it was like the most minor change on the second one, right? They just like super zoomed in on the scale. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is sort of this idea, you should have your own code of ethics, so to speak, right? You have a responsibility to make sure that if there's errors, you talk about them and you show them. You know, you have to cite your sources. You can't just take data from somewhere and not give them credit, right? Like we talked about cherry picking, you can't omit data. And you need to, even though this is sort of that fuzzy line, like, yes, you're finding your story that you want to tell. You're finding like a point of action that you've decided after you've explored this data, you've learned about it, but you can't make it your opinion. Data is still all about facts, right? You are interpreting these things, but like, and that's sort of what we talk about the sensationalist language and stuff. That's why that's sort of avoided because that starts to get a little too subjective, right? Like you still want it to be the sort of logical, concrete portrayal of the data. You're just making sure that it still tells a story. And I know that's kind of, I don't know if I'm explaining that really well, so please, ask questions. If not, I'm looking at, oh, I like the comments. Josh, yours is funny. I like that. Best practice for citing your source. Yeah, Danny added that, like a source tag or a link is fine. It depends on, again, the audience and where it's being used. So, if it's being published in like an academic paper, like something like that, it's going to be more particular, right? You might have like MLA or APA or something, some other thing. But if it's just a general visualization, especially for just like a job or something, I think any kind of credit is sufficient as long as it's there. And then I like this one, just to kind of think about this, like consider the consequences, there are consequences, like there can be bad consequences for people when data is misrepresented. People use it for political gain. That's a major one, it could sway an election one way or another. It could determine whether or not an organization gets grant funding, right? Maybe one organization gets more funding, but they don't actually do anything and they lied about all their charts, and then another organization that does good work doesn't get the money now, right? Like it's not just for the sake of like being ethical, like there's real reasons behind what can go wrong if you start to lie. Essentially, it's really just lying with the data if you start to misconstrue things and intentionally change axes and stuff like that. Okay. When we talk about accessibility, it's almost always like red-green color blindness. So it's like the biggest thing that pops up. And yes, that is a thing. Like, lots of people are colorblind. We got tons of friends, husband's colorblind, like I know so many people, right? It's a thing. But there's also other types of sort of limited vision and low vision, and a ton of people that use screen readers for various reasons, right? So you need to make sure with things online, you're using alt text for the visualizations, or even in your writing as well. Like if you're referencing things, don't just say like, oh, in the chart above, blah, 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 like describe what the chart is. Like you use descriptive language to make sure that people who can't necessarily see the chart or aren't reading for themselves can understand still what's going on. It's really easy in a website to like skip an alt text, but you really shouldn't, just for the sake of, there are maybe way more people out there than you realize that utilize those tools every single day and need them to be able to perceive what you have. And also just, you even just think like maybe you have like poor connectivity, like you have really slow internet, or it doesn't load, or like the resolution isn't working. There's a lot of reasons why people might need to be able to like read more instead of being able to like see tiny details and whatnot. Okay. And so here's another, I'm not going to read through all of these, but definitely I would say come back when you're reviewing the slideshow and just kind of like read all of these bullet points to give you some good, just like quick tips of how to make it more accessible to people who might, need a little bit, just have different needs, when we're viewing your graph. Is there a source to review best practices for creating/placing alt text? Yes. Yeah, Danny, you're on it. Danny's on it. I was going to say otherwise, I feel like Arissa would be a good resource. Honestly, Dan, you're in here. You might even know when it comes to alt text stuff. I haven't done as much with websites, so I'm, let anyone else interject.
There's a lot of web standards. Like when you're actually programming, there is alt text tags that you can do. And then kind of in that, there's other tags that you can do for accessibility. But I'm sure there's a framework out there. I know there's like the lighthouse testing that you can do. It's like a built into the dev tools, and that'll tell you if your colors and stuff are correct and how correct your site is for accessibility. But it's going to kind of vary differently depending on where that's used and how it's used and everything.
Nice. All right. Okay, so let's think about our workflow then. As Danny said before, audience. Audience is really, really important. Is this person like the people that are going to look at your graph, like, do they have all of this domain knowledge, or is this the general public? How old are they? Are you making something for, your peers, for children, for elderly people? Like, like who are these people? Like where are they coming from? And it's not just the visuals. It's like it says vocabulary, right? How detailed, like, can you assume any context at all, or do you need to really lay it all out, or do you need to simplify some concepts to get to show what the data is showing, right? The audience, I mean, it's hard, it's like the tone and understanding your audience is one of those skills that is deceptively tricky. It sounds really easy, but it's not as easy as it seems. And the best way to know if you're really nailing it or hitting the mark is to find those people and ask them. It's to find someone who would be similar to your intended audience or part of your intended audience and show them your chart, talk about it, ask them questions, and do that as often as you can until you feel like you kind of have a better knack for it, right? And maybe it's always changing depending on what your job is, right? And then even just this idea of like, well, who, say you're putting something on a website, like who's the general audience for a website? Like, what does that even mean? Is that the general public everywhere? Is that people only interested in this one thing you're talking about? What are those people like? So you might have to do a little bit of research there. Patty says, who is my audience for this? What are their positions? What is their location? Yeah, those are all really good questions to ask for sure. It's really the same as, for when you guys were in school, like you're writing papers, your English teachers are always going to be like, who is the audience? Like that's same thing. Question next, what do I want them to do? That's that action point. That's going to be like the main purpose of like, that's the story this is telling, right? What should they do? You're making some kind of a recommendation, perhaps. Maybe it's like, oh, I want this, grant board to approve an increase to the grant for this community-based organization because they're doing all of this good work, and I can prove it here, right? What data tells that story, right? So when it says don't include data that doesn't serve the action, this does not mean cherry picking, right? This means relevance. Right. So it's not like, oh, I just took this little subset of these years, or I just took like we said, like maybe just say we took, half the zip codes in Louisville, not the other halves, because we wanted to paint a certain picture, right? We're talking about like, you don't, if there's variables that have nothing to do with what you're looking at, and there's no influence, no correlation, and they don't add anything, you don't need to include them, right? Like the variables that you're using have a purpose and a job. And so, don't, yeah, it really just says what it says. Don't include it if it doesn't like serve the purpose. You want to choose the best chart type. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that more in our interactive time. There's a lot of really good websites out there. Like From Data to Viz is one of my favorites. And you can just kind of click through, be like, oh, what kind of data do you have? It sees all your options. And then for those of you doing, who are coding it as well, like it gives you the Python docs and stuff for how to build the charts. It's great. How do I highlight? Oh, yep.
I was going to say something really important to keep in mind is you don't always have to tell the full story in one plot. Sometimes you might, want to show the top 10 performers in something, but it's also important to show the whole picture. So you might have the plot of the top 10 performers and then show the whole group of workers or whatever the top 10 are, a part of. And then you might see, hey, the top 10 did perform that well, but it was a very close race. Everybody performed mostly the same. Or it could be these top 10 blew out the rest of the other workers or whatever that you're showing. But you can have multiple plots to tell that story and really drive home the point that way.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really great point. That also just kind of made me think, just as an aside, we haven't really talked we haven't talked at all through this about dashboards, but maybe you're building a dashboard too, and that's kind of a whole other thing. Like you still have to use the same principles for each chart, but you would think about like, well, how do they each fit together to be a component of the story? They don't necessarily stand alone, right? Yeah, cool. How can you highlight the insights that you want to be shown the most? Those are those pre-attentive attributes we talked about. Maybe all the bars on your chart are gray and then like one of them is red because that's the important one, right? Or one of them is blue or whatever your color scheme is. Have I removed everything unnecessary, right? So going through that decluttering checklist, like getting rid of all of your chart junk, making sure that there, is nothing that is distracting to your eyes, that's increasing that cognitive load without adding any information. Right? And then again, I'm not going to read through this, but this is here for you to go through. It tells you like, hey, what are some of the most common mistakes that we see all the time? Like, what can you do instead? Right? And I know I kind of did this, but to be honest, like, I think people are using too many colors in general. Like most of the time, it's so tempting to have all your categories different colors when it's almost never adding anything important. Unless the colors are like, maybe you have different product categories and then you have products within those. So you want like each of the products to have the color of the category, but then the product be a bar, right? Something like that I could see, having like but most of the time, if you just have like categories that are standing alone and aren't being grouped otherwise, like they could probably all be the same color or with one of them or a couple of them highlighted. All right.
The only time it serves a great purpose is if there is like a clear, like these colors, mean this. Like I was looking at some F1 plots today, so like Formula One racing, and there was cool ones by the teams, and the teams were all the colors that the teams are.
Yeah.
For the good plots, and then a lot of the bad plots were random colors, and you were like, oh, why is red not with Ferrari? Why is that with... that makes no sense. What's happening here?
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. And that's pretty much it. So we have, I guess I've got this slide. This is just, again, you guys can read through this. It's, if you have to ask a question, if my audience sees only this one visual and nothing else, will they know exactly what I want them to think or do? And again, take that with a grain of salt. As Danny said, sometimes, you might need more than one. Sometimes we might be making a dashboard, but a lot of times you do have standalone visuals. And if that's the case, and you're only making one, right, and you aren't telling them anything, you're not writing anything, they don't have to read the article, they don't have to dive into the data, like, do they understand what you want them to think or to do? And if they can't, then, maybe go back through the checklist, So I've got some links for things. Danny, how do you feel? Do you want to go through some of these links, or do you want to kind of open up you have a bunch in your Google Drive. We could just use those.
Yeah, I was going to just share my screen and show some stuff.
Yeah, let's do that. You guys have these links, for the future to check out some of the bad, the bad and the ugly abominations of charts. And then I'll go ahead and close out my presentation. I'll let Danny share his screen. And this next part is like very collaborative. So I really encourage all of you to speak up. There's like 40 people. So I guess you could like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. You could raise your hand if it seems like a lot of people are speaking all at once. But for the most part, I think we can keep this pretty casual and just kind of.
If you get super excited, talk over each other. We love that too.
I do love that. That would be like the best. I'm gonna turn my camera back on too. I had to turn it off because I don't like seeing myself talking. Like I get distracted. I can't
All
present in.
So one big thing we're going to look at, and I want everybody to be civil about, we're going to look at some political charts, and we're not looking at them for political purposes. We're looking at them just for how you can push narratives or use data unethically. And we'll look at different ways that it's done. So if everybody can agree upon that, we'll do that. And then I'll also show you how we break all the rules that Ailene laid out and how we don't and how we do. We'll look at some different stuff. So first one I wanted to show, because I know it'll make Ailene a little upset, is here's a plot where we truncated the y-axis. This is a site that I'm building, and the important part for this is its intended audience is folks that are online gambling really quick in the moment during skateboard runs. So these little dips and valleys being the same does not help you place bets and make money. So we truncated, so really quickly. And then when you click the various obstacles, you'll see, how they're performing on those. So time and place to do things, mostly 100% correct. We always want to keep that y-axis at 0, but sometimes we want to break the rules. And we'll jump into some of our political stuff here. So this is just kind of highlighting several plots together, more of like a dashboard, but you can do like subplots and have multiple things like this. And plots like this are typically, if we just look at the map, you'll see a lot of this used to show like, hey, most of the country votes red and very little of it votes blue. But if we dive into it a bit more, we can see like, hey, it's super close to 50-50 on that. It's the electoral votes that really make the difference, and that's how we ended up there. So framing those narratives a little bit can be dishonest, just depending on how we're laying it out and doing it. Again, here we got another one. This one's pretty solid because we're seeing the different breakdowns kind of side by side. You got the cool little bar here on how it's actually kind of went on the popular vote. Then we've got our total states, and much to the same, we're seeing that, they're going off how the, whatever they call that, the representatives vote. But cool things that you rarely see together with that is things like this, where it's actually broke down to like a county level. So you're seeing how the actual US goes in that favor, which is pretty interesting. And then there's different ways to look at it. So we're doing like the dots in different sizes so that we're seeing like, hey, these are larger chunks of population making up bigger dots. And then where we see all the red happening, we know that that part of the US is less populated. But we got the equal representation, all that good stuff. But pretty interesting to see that. This plot here is pretty cool because we know that it's the US, but then it's looking at those different areas, and showing a breakdown of how they're actually voting, and gives you a little bit more context and a nice, easy way to see. So if you wanted to see how your state was doing, you could look, and we can see, hey, Kentucky voting mostly red, but it's not as straightforward as, the something like this says. Then we got another one here, just looking more at the population and how it's actually voting in those elections. So we see these huge swells here where it's extremely densely populated, and along here, so on and so forth. And then we got other plots like that, just to see different ways to plot it and how you could look at it. And then if we do like an all out where everybody voted, each dot represents a person, it gets really overwhelming and crazy. But good, bad, ugly. I thought these were pretty cool. They're population density maps, so showing where the actual population is and how they voted. You get the spikes, and there's just pure population there. So kind of fun stuff. This one here is also just pure population. And then we got some other little fun plots to kind of show how different things look. Like Alaska is represented by one person versus New Jersey. And then if we distributed our whole population by state, that's kind of what it would look like. So just some fun stuff, how you could see, you could frame different political stuff very dishonestly, and how you could be a little bit more honest about it. So nothing crazy to debate there or talk about. We're going to look at other cool plots and if we like them or not. So I kind of labeled these with my opinions, but I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on, say, a plot like this and how we feel about it.
It's too much, in my opinion.
I'm really overwhelmed. Like, it has good information, like, don't get me wrong. It's just, yeah, it's a lot of information. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it definitely is. I like this site. They do a lot of kind of off the wall plots like this, and you're able to kind of research the topic that they're presenting yourself, which is very interesting and fun, and you don't see a lot. But it can be overwhelming for sure.
Well, so I saw one of the comments said you don't know where to look first, but it's interesting because my eyes immediately go somewhere first. What about you guys? Like, someone else tell me the flow of your vision and what you saw first versus what you then continued to see. Yeah, I see a couple pinks in there. A lot of pinks in there. Same here. Of course, pink first for me too. It's bright, it's big. Can one of you guys unmute and just kind of talk through like how you figured out this chart?
I mean, how I visually saw it?
Yeah, just sort of like talk out loud as if you like when you saw it for the first time, you're like, oh, first I saw this, then I saw that.
So I looked at pink first and began to parse it and see exactly what it was saying. And then I went to red because that's the opposite. And then I noticed that I can't really tell if yellow and green are different. I'm assuming that yellow is third and green is fourth, but they look very similar to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Second and third, and then red would be fourth. And I'm guessing it's talking about overall volume of money.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because it's like I didn't even see the title first on this one. I saw the big pink thing, and it was only after that I was like, oh wait, economy, okay. First I saw the countries, and then I saw the numbers, and I saw the title with the economy, and then I saw, okay, projected nominal GDP, right? It took me a while to get to like, what do these numbers represent in the first place? And apparently they're all projected nominal GDP. But yeah, so that's kind of, it's interesting. Does anybody like this chart, or do people not like the chart? Yeah, we got a full split.
This might be a personal preference for me, but I wish that it was in order from left to right in the highest number. Like, I don't know. I feel like green and red should be switched, because then it would be like a nice pretty wheel. But that's just an aesthetic thing for me.
So like instead of having it match the map, have it just be like biggest to smallest going down like a spiral.
Yeah, well, I don't even know how. Oh, I see what you mean by matching the map. Yeah, I get that, but like you would probably be able to see the difference between yellow and green better if it was put in order like that.
I think they could have definitely changed the colors to make it more effective.
Yeah, Dustin.
So this is kind of reminding me of an issue that I was having during the capstone. Is I kind of like tables. I think tables are really interesting, and I kind of had to reckon with the difference between a table and a chart, because I think this is interesting because you can dive into it and get a lot of information, but you're not going to get it quick, and that's sort of, I think the purpose of a chart is to give very pointed insight quickly. And so if that were the brief, I think this would fail. But I do like to dig into it and see all of the information. So I'm kind of on the fence. I like it because it has a lot of information, and you can understand what it's trying to say a little bit more clear, but it doesn't I don't really walk away with any actionable insight. It's just like, oh, it's good to know.
Yeah, Heather.
I actually really like the chart. I like how we have the title up there in white. I like that the colors are muted and they're not something that are kind of bold and harsh to look at. They're pleasant. I also like that they incorporated the flags, because if the writing is too small for someone to see from a distance, if they know which flag they're looking for, they can find their information fairly quickly. And then I like how it has the totals right there on the side. And I feel like it's just very clear and easy to, it's a lot of information in a pie chart that actually comes across very clearly.
Nice. Anybody
Yeah,
else have any thoughts? Oh, go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
I was gonna say this website, or it's an app. It's really cool because it'll have these cool plots like this, and then you click on them, and it has the article that accompanies it, which it makes it like a really good story, and you get to see how they actually use the visual to tell whatever story or narrative. So definitely recommend checking that out.
Someone says it has middle school library or lunchroom vibes. I could see that. I really like it too, honestly. I think it offers a lot of information. I don't think it has any irrelevant information, right? Every single thing in this picture serves a purpose.
Yeah, a big thing compositionally, like I'm a photographer initially, graphic designer, so your eye gets sucked into the pink and you see that it's the biggest, and then you just start moving in a circle. So I went, title, what's the title? Oh, that's what it's about. And then I went back to the pink, seeing that, you know, we got Western Europe at 12.8 trillion, and then just started going around the circle, and then finally like spiraled to the map and was like, oh, that's cool. That's how it all correlates. And then I shot back out and was like, let me see the big picture again and how it all works with each other. And then started going into the little chunks. We ready to move on to the next one?
I think, yeah, probably.
All right, we will dive into this. Good luck. I have no idea what's happening here. So y'all tell me what you're thinking.
Well, we see some state abbreviations at the thick lines. Voter swing is what people say. Jamie says, yes, a very clear mess. Yes. Possible.
Well,
So some of the, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you're fine. I was just gonna say that, I mean, I kind of get like what the chart's trying to get out, but what another thing I was gonna say is about the lines themselves. Like, it looks like there are like varying like colors happening. Like, if we look at, you know, the left hand side, like the lines look like a little bit more of like a lighter blue. And then like if we go like towards the middle, the blue and red lines both get a little bit darker and stuff. So I like that there's variability. Like, I can tell there's some sort of variability there.
Yeah. I don't know if it's better that they're tied. That's what the darker colors would indicate to me, but
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, what is the thick? Because you can see, like, you know, the little bars where it has the state names, it's just showing you, like, okay, that's what this line is. This line is that state. Like, how is this
yeah, and is
state
it
changed
Hawaii
over
all the
time?
way through?
Yeah, there's Hawaii down there. Whew. Hawaii went way Democrat, and then I'm surprised that Hawaii is not in the middle for 2020, to be totally honest. Anyway, yeah, so each state, you know, has its own little line, but we don't know. There's no title, there's no subtitle, there's no source,
Yeah,
there's no, you know, what else is missing,
Kentucky's
guys?
there.
What do
I
you
don't
think?
know where
Josh?
what spaghetti line we stick to, or if we
I
shifted.
think that, yeah, it's like, I think that it's all one line, but it's really hard to trace it with your eyes because, you
Yeah.
know, they're faint pink lines.
Maybe
Josh?
it's one of these.
I was just thinking, I feel like it would be easier to read just intuitively if it were rotated, right? If the timeline were along the bottom. Because I get why it's a line chart, because it's showing progression over time, but the top to bottom thing just wigs me out.
Yeah. Yeah, I stumbled on this, was like, I don't know what this is doing, so we're grabbing that for sure.
Well, you know what's funny is that they made it wiggly intentionally. They only have like concrete data points, but they don't have a straight line going from one data point to the other. They've added the wiggle for no reason.
Yeah.
Like there's wiggle there. Like if, you know, look at the far right. What is that? Wyoming, like between 2012 and 2016. Like what's up with that wiggle? Like why is, you know, they've added wiggle. It's unnecessary. It doesn't add anything, right? This whole thing wigs me out.
All right, so we'll jump into another fun one. Boom. So this one is religious percents with some very wild coloring for the densities.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was gonna say right quick is like I was looking at the legend and like the different colors. It's like the rainbow. I just wish there was like one like color palette or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure, right? Because what are they doing? Like, what did you guys remember what this one? It's basically a diverging color scheme, sort of, except it's even out of order that way. And they have very similar colors, mean 96 to 100 and 43 to 45. It might be the same color.
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Yeah, there's no real telling on that. And yeah, this one was actually on a blog of Good Visuals. And I was like, well.
Oh, wow.
I don't
What would you guys
believe
do
that.
instead? Yeah, I was going to say, talk us through like what would, if you guys were trying to show religious adherence as a percentage of all residents. What does that even mean? Like the person, I guess that means like out of the general population, how many people would describe themselves as being religious, I assume?
I think you reduce the number of colors, right? Like you make it like 80 to 100 instead of breaking it down into 81 to 85, 86 to 95, 96 to 100.
Right?
It's so hard to look at.
Yeah. Does it need to be discrete at all? Right? Could it just be a could it just be a continuous shading? Right? Have you guys seen those where like instead of having like sort of a continuous color blocking like each color being a range, you just have like the range, you know? And so there's no like discrete block. Yeah, like an ombre effect, exactly. Right? So you would just have like one color, like, you know, light to dark. I would probably flip-flop and make the dark the heavier concentration, right?
Yeah, but as well. Also confused at the island of California. What's going on there? Los Angeles Island.
They put a little avocado
What does that
in
mean?
the middle of it.
What does that mean?
Oh gosh. Oof, it's just gross looking. It's bad to look at.
So, we are at 7, so if you do have to drop off, you know, don't feel bad. But if y'all want, we can stick around and look at some other plots here.
Let's look at other plots. I'm amused.
All right. This website had a wild mix, so we got a lot from their site. What do y'all think about this one?
Thumbs down. Why, Josh? What are your thoughts?
Well, I can work it out, but it's not easy. I mean, I can see what's happening, right? It's like, okay, just looking at strawberry North America at the bottom left, it's, I'm guessing percentage, yeah, per capita fruit consumption. Okay, great. But I feel like this one might benefit from a map view. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fruits. So maybe you do, you know, a color coding that way, but this is just like,
Yeah. And what's really ironic about this one is it follows a lot of the rules that we talked about as being good. We've got, you know, a good title. We got a nice little subtitle there. We've got our data source, which is all fictional, so not real. So we know that, but you know, we eliminated some of our variables or labels and whatnot, but it's still very confusing.
Well, what's the rule that it broke? I guess we didn't really dig in too much, but like, what type of data is this? Who can tell me, like, what is the type of data? Nyalis.
I think this graphic is better if it's barred on bar's graphic because it's about categories.
Exactly.
You know, you can see better comparison.
Yep.
It's talking about fruits and regions more than numbers. And for
Yeah.
this reason, I don't like the points in the circles.
No, 100%. This is a scatter plot, and scatter plots we should only be doing with 2 numerical variables, and that's it. So never with categorical. And like you said, these are both categorical, so it's just kind of like, it doesn't look right. Doesn't work.
Yep. This
Yeah.
was used as a good example for a scatter plot on their site.
That's wild. Site was written by AI.
So here's another one from that site. So we know that we're back in the fruit land.
So who can tell us? Somebody volunteer and just break it apart. Give us the good and the bad. Tell us what they did, by what we kind of learned in the slideshow. Like what do they do or not do?
Okay, I'll go. They do call out, right? They call out with the color that ties to the title, that ties to the subtitle. But it's almost like it tells you nothing at all. Like
Yeah.
they're like ripe fruits delivered 9,000 units while unripe and spoiled lag behind. Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very clearly demonstrated, but 9,000 units to whom, when, over what time frame? Like,
Mhm.
Yeah,
It
like
doesn't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you're fine. I was just gonna say, like, I'm not seeing any like X or Y labels. So it's like, yeah, we have the title and stuff, right? I'm sorry. I see where we have the unripe, almost ripe and stuff like that. But I guess like with bar charts, I'm just like used to seeing like more labels and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like, right. You guys said like they did the simplicity. They used color, these pre-attentive attributes, right? But like, what's the point? Like, what's the point? Yeah, it's like, okay, we have basically a normal distribution here of fruits.
Yeah.
But what are the units and what fruits and where? I really liked how you said that. Just like, well, for what are we talking about? Bananas here in Hawaii.
the world, the U.S. How many? We're talking about like number of pieces of fruit, number of pounds, like units. What's a unit of fruit?
Yeah, right. It's kind of like if you remember like that question that we had on the slideshow. It's like if my audience sees only this one visual and nothing else, well, they know exactly what I want them to think or do. And like, I don't think anything from this. I'm like, okay, people like ripe fruit. Okay.
Yeah, the big thing for me was, we read left to right, top to bottom, and that's usually how we want to kind of get our information. And I looked at it for about 5 minutes before I realized, like, oh, this is the process that the fruit goes through. But, if we were looking at like selling the fruit and how we're going to make our money, then, we would want this to be first and then almost ripe second, overripe third, unripe. We could argue that could actually be first because it'll go through the process, but the sorting is very odd. I was like, I don't like this, and then it's missing so much stuff that it looks clean, but it's too clean and doesn't give us any kind of real meaning.
Yeah, and also like, who's buying spoiled fruit?
Yeah,
it just seems odd. It's an odd. I mean, it is fake. It's fictional data or fictitious data. So
It's people making banana bread, I think, is that number.
Yeah. It's anyone who comes around my house most of the time. I'm like, please take these bananas, please. I have too many bananas. For the love of God. Yeah. All right.
On to our next one, and one of my least favorite plots ever.
What in the world? What do you guys think?
if it didn't have the numbers, could we clearly determine what one has more for sure or not? Do we know?
No. Well, okay, see, like I was looking at the title. Okay, so it says total units sold by fruit variety. So we would be comparing a numerical value with a categorical value, right? So if that's the case, I mean, wouldn't this be better as a bar chart? I mean, I don't know.
It is
Yeah.
a bar chart. It's just curved around.
Yeah.
The unnecessary wiggle, guys. People are adding in the wiggle. Why are they doing it?
It's a pie chart, but not. And
Curvy.
these don't even line up if it was to continue. You know,
Yeah, that's
the
worst
grape
part.
would probably end with apple. So what does that mean?
What is going on? They took their bar chart and they just bent it around. And
What?
yeah, it's hard to perceive circular things, and that's why when we talk about pie charts, how you don't want more than like 4 or 5 pie slices max, because it's really difficult to perceive minor changes in something like a wedge. And same with these on these curves. Like obviously it doesn't, the distance in the middle part of the circle is not as large as the outer part of the circle, and then trying to like deduce that, it's funky. And they've listed them in order, but then that just meant warping. They've like warped the circle.
Yeah.
It's not even a real circle anymore. Much better just to make it more simple, right?
I think we start to hit the fun charts. Or no,
Oh,
we got
good.
another
Here we
bad one.
go.
There's another. Well,
All the
it's
all
up
the
for
fruits.
interpretation.
Hear me out. It's in radians. That's the unit of fruits, actually. Uh,
So this one, I could see argued that it's a good chart, and then I would argue that it's not.
I don't like the floating aspect.
That's
I feel like it's just floating in the air. Like, where am I looking at?
that's
Yeah,
what hurts me. Is it's like a stacked bar chart, and these are what they want you to focus on, but
Are the
we're missing
percent
the whole.
growths? Are we missing like a secondary y-axis?
No, because it's off of, or well, yeah, because it would be from here.
Yeah, I feel
No.
like.
Oh,
well, I mean,
okay, it's from this one, from the low point. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
bad.
I assume that it's right. The Q1 2023, then plus 25%, then minus 7% from that. Like,
Yeah,
it-
so we're starting from here and going up.
you say yeah, but how do you know?
yeah, well, I was just saying, because when you look at the shape of it, right, it's like they have the starting point, right? So every next one starts at the
last
bottom of it, right? So like if you go to the top of the gray one, and then that goes up 25%, and then Q3 starts at the top of the blue and goes down 7%, and then Q4 starts at the bottom of the orange and then goes up. You know what I mean? The up ones start at the top, the down ones start at the bottom, and it pops over, right? So it's supposed to show the like steps up and down to get from Q1 23 to Q2
Supposed to be a
25.
line chart, is what.
Wouldn't that be easier to see, right? So this is what somebody was trying to be. I think I could see how some people would say this is good, even though I also hate it. Just the idea that if like, oh well, maybe executives just want to see whether we go up and down every quarter. Like, oh well, most of the quarters, all but 2 quarters, we had increases. But Q3 we had decreases for 2 years in a row. Right, so Q3 has decreases, but they, and then that they put that in the title, slight dips each Q3, right? So it's like, they're trying to get there, but like you said, it makes it confusing. It would be better if they were gonna highlight that they just still had the gray bars going all the way across, and they just highlighted the drops. Like if they just kept the gray bars and just colored that top part, it would be a lot less confusing, I think, for people.
Yeah, this
Does
one,
anybody here like it? Does anybody like this chart? Like, we hate it.
overall, it looks nice visually.
They got rid of the chart junk. They have a source, they have a descriptive title and subtitle. This goes to show like you can follow all the right steps, but still like if you don't, you can follow the steps of like what should or shouldn't be in the chart, but that doesn't mean you'll have a good chart necessarily if people don't understand it.
we'll dive into our next one. This one is really interesting because it does a lot of cool call outs, but also it loses you in a lot of places.
Water district customers.
So
Yeah, so volunteers, like who can
how are
I
we
like
feeling
it like
about
when people like, yeah, like talk it out loud. Like give us your stream of consciousness as you're as you look at this. What do you notice or not notice? Who else is here? We could pick on somebody. Pick
This
on any
does
cozy
Eileen's favorite
people.
thing here.
It starts at 0. Wait, is it weird though? Is it goes from 0 to 50 and then 50 to 75? Why does it go from 0 to 50? Oh no, why would they do that? I do hate that. That's what
Makes
what's
no
the point?
sense.
Why not just start at 25 or start at 0 and have an extra? Ah, good grief.
Yeah, but what does this mean over time? Like, is that over time or is it just individual neighbors? Should it have been a bar graph or?
Yeah, it says annual use. It says water district customers, but what's interesting though, like, are those discrete like households or, and then why is efficient use not at the bottom? Average use, your use. Someone's taking a lot of baths over here. Yeah, interesting. What do you guys think? They're shaming the customer for their water usage. They're trying to say, hey, like it's all just made up. They're just saying, hey, stop using so much water. I don't know why they would. You have to pay for water.
Well, they tell me I'm doing really good, but they try to shame the neighbors.
Yeah. Well, also in this, it's like the water droplets, to be honest, are distracting because like it's the data point, the bottom of the drop, where the drop crosses the line, the top of the drop, like I get that it's
Middle.
water, but it's kind of cheesy. Yeah, it's like is it right in the middle or is it on the line? Like where is the data point for the drop? Why like I feel like this would be better off as a histogram of water use distribution. So you could more easily just see the average and then you could just highlight the bar that's yours.
Yeah. For me, I was wondering how they would get your use. Like, is that something that a user put in, or how do they come to that number? Because if they're just using the average, then I thought that would just be the main focus and not your use. So I'm just wondering how they got uh the yellow. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I have no idea on the particulars behind it.
Maybe in theory it's like given to you by your water company. So they have it, maybe. I don't know. Water drought propaganda created by Big Water. You guys are cracking me up in the chat today.
All right, we'll dive into some good plots now. So how do we feel about this? Anybody sports fans or?
I think this chart is really interesting just because you can easily compare it to the other players. Like obviously LeBron James is the lead scorer and achieving that way earlier than Kareem in his career. So I think really interesting.
Cool, right?
Yeah, it does a good job with so many data points on there, just highlighting, the big ones that folks would probably be wanting to see.
Yeah, well, it's cool because it's got all 250 lines on there, so you see the spread, but they're only highlighting the people who are playing now. Right? Is that current players? Yeah. So
no, it's not current.
It's not? Is that not what that is? Oh, because those aren't quite blue, are they? So only some of them are current.
Some of the gray ones are retired, like Michael
Jordan, I guess
Kobe
Michael
Bryant.
Jordan's not still playing. I didn't see Michael Jordan. I don't watch sports at all. Like I don't watch basketball, so I don't know any of these names. But
I don't either. It was a real
probably would
struggle.
have recognized Michael Jordan though. I could have gotten that one. Kobe Bryant, yeah, didn't he die? Oh gosh, something like that. Anyway, Sorry. Well, in any case, yeah, it's cool. I like how many lines there are and that you can still decipher what they want you to see. We got the source on there. Someone says, I hope Kobe isn't still playing. Did he die? I'm remembering that correctly.
He
He
definitely
did?
did.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We'll dive into another one here. So what are our thoughts here, anybody? There is something cool happening where Ailene mentioned it in the presentation about, using another plot to zoom in. So we saw that, the US is number one, and I don't know, we can dig around for number two, wherever that's at, China. And then we can kind of go over here and we see, oh, inside the US, we got a ton of other places that are the top economies of the world. So pretty cool there, where I guess you could put some separate numbers in the US, but I don't know. Pretty cool and effective, I thought.
What do you guys think is like the story or audience for this?
Economist, maybe?
Maybe from where though?
I'm
It
guessing
says
from the
international.
U.S. since they really, they highlight the U.S. They don't break down like German regions, for example. Number
Kind of what
three.
I was thinking. They zoom in on the US, but they don't zoom in Europe. They don't zoom in on China, which surely inside China there's a ton more. I guess. I mean, I don't know. It says top 30, but yeah, is it like how do they choose to break it down? I would be surprised if there weren't cities in China or other cities in Europe that wouldn't count too. Like it's curious. It's curious because like yeah, the one is listed on the main map and you have like, 1, 2, 3, right? But then 4 is California. So it's just interesting. The way that it's kind of like zoomed in there is a little odd to me.
Yeah, I wonder if
does
it's
make
because like California economy is so big that it's bigger than like the UK itself. So like,
yeah,
let's
it
highlight
appears
that.
that way. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. It just seems like yeah, like are there not any like China's got 18.7 trillion. So there's no like, none of the city breakdowns there would be as much as California. It's just interesting. I don't know whether it is or not. That's my only qualm with this one. Like I kind of like it, but also like I think it's a little misleading that it only zooms in on the US, but also like where would they put the other zooms, Like how so they're trying to figure out like who cares about it. Like I would say it's probably geared more towards people interested in US things perhaps versus people who are interested in Chinese things. I don't know. Another school one.
I could see it being used a couple different ways. One thing I wanted to highlight with these is they are a lot more technical, but you do look at these. Whereas like this is a stronger plot overall. But if this was popping up in your social media newsfeed, do you stop and read this? Or do you stop and read this? So
yeah, this is
kind of knowing your audience and then how you're trying to connect with them. That is one of the hardest parts about being in this field, depending on like where you land and what section and what audiences you're trying to capture. So thought that was cool. We're back to our fruit sales. I like this one actually, so curious what y'all think about it.
I have a question that stands out. I'm wondering why. Oh, never mind. I answered my question. I was gonna say, why is it so interested in blueberry? But it's because it's the lowest. Sorry, I didn't see the whole thing because I'm on my phone. Like what?
Yeah, this one bothers me that it doesn't have the y-axis line or the x-axis line, but it did take me a little minute to piece everything together, but I thought it was cool, like where you have the target range and then you're exceeding expectations and below. then I would assume this dotted line is that's the target where they want you to be. So
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I like how they have that, like the target line versus the 3 like kind of color shades for below, on track, and exceeding.
yeah, I would personally love like a little
block.
hint of something there that we could see.
Yeah.
But
I was thinking just like a little bit, just something like a little light gray, something to show us. I don't know. Yeah,
yeah, but I could see this being effective for like store managers and employees to like look at and be like, hey, this is where our numbers are and we got to get them up, and everybody could grasp the concept.
Is the title what we should be aiming for? Like, not being generic and then having a title like this, just stating out the most, I guess, what we want to focus on.
I think it depends on what your focus is. So that's what like these people decided to focus on. Oh, these lead performance. Like you could also say, more like you could like, over 50% of fruit sales. I'm gonna make up a bad title right now. Like, more than half of fruit sales are, or no, I'm trying to think of 3 out of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, more than
Only
half are
3,
below target.
More than half are below target, or only 3 out of 8 are exceeding expectations. But yeah, you could definitely spin it in a more negative way if you wanted to say like they're not meeting the target sales. But what's weird is that like on track and like target is still inside the on track, so that's kind of confusing. Or you could say, for 5th year in a row, blueberry sales are below expectations, or something like, it just kind of depends on what the point is, right? Are you trying to increase blueberry sales? Or are you trying to show off how good pineapple sales were?
Yeah, and other like key factors. So like if we're a GM of a store and we're meeting with our regional manager, he's going to really want everything on that target number. So we might spin it as, hey, look at our pineapple, banana, and grape sales. They're exceeding all expectations. Look how awesome that is. And please only look there. Do not look below them at all. We would strongly emphasize this. So like this hurts us less, especially like if a bonus is just something is on the line. And that's kind of dishonest, but that's probably how you would spin it. Or if you were having like a performance review on the flip flop, you'd be like, hey, like let's talk about our blueberries. Like you're almost not meeting our strawberry sales, but blueberries, we really need to push those and get those at least on track. So
funny. It's so unrealistic, right? Like surely people don't buy so many pineapples, right? Buy way more blueberries.
I don't know. The data says something different.
I know, right? It's clearly fictional, though. I mean, come on. That's.
We'll dive into our other one. Jeez. All right. So something cool here. We got our first graphic that has nothing to do with it, but something to do with it. So another cool one from the site that just all these really grab your attention and make you look at the chart. So I wanted to throw some of these in there and see how we feel about them.
Is that like a tooltip that's been hovered over, or is that just live there? The little middle thing that says China controls key materials, like that little box at the top in the middle. It's like red on red. Nope, it's buried in the bars.
Oh, no, that lives there.
That thing. Oh,
this
it just lives there.
This is a static image.
Okay. All right, guys, let's hear them. Good, bad. What would you keep? What would you change?
As Ailene pointed out, I would change that. I didn't even see that. I looked at this for quite some
Dan
time.
says colors don't make sense to me. Dan, elaborate, please.
Yeah, so we have all these metals, but what's so important about, say, cobalt? It sticks out amongst all this red. What does that mean? Or nickel, why is that pink? Why is that sticking out?
Yeah. So the the colors are associated with the countries, but it is not obvious, is it? Like you have
No.
to notice if you go down to the next blue one, right? It's got the same flag as.
Oh, those are flags?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
see?
thought they were icons.
Oh yeah, so they're kind of
Leading
little bitty, but they're
producer.
flags.
So there's some issues with it.
Yeah.
Mhm. It'd be good if you weren't like me and you knew all of your international flags. Well, it is really small here right now, but I have no idea the flag next to Cobalt. I can't tell from looking. Oh, yeah, you zooming in. I guess I could zoom in too. What flag is that? It does look familiar.
I
I
have no
embarrass
idea.
myself here. Cobalt flag, I don't know. The green one, that's Brazil, right? Is it the Brazilian flag? We know
Yeah,
China's
that's Brazil.
flag. So at least we can recognize a couple of them.
I don't know what
Yep.
that one is.
Mm.
The black one.
That looks so familiar.
I was thinking
Yeah.
Jamaica, but it was only because the black and yellow. I think maybe it has green.
South Africa?
No, I don't. Is it? That's not South Africa, is it? Let's see.
We all
Maybe
failed our
it
country
is.
test today.
Right? Maybe no, it is South Africa. You're totally right. Yeah, whoever said that, my apologies. It is South Africa. God, I didn't know their flag looked like that. What's up with? Yeah, this clearly. We may have excelled in some subjects, but not in geography and flag. But yeah, so that is kind of confusing because it does make it, it's like if you don't have, like why, I don't know. The color choices are very stark.
Yeah, I think that's Australia. Maybe.
Which
I
one?
don't know. The one down here.
Yeah, that looks like Australia, right? I think so.
I think so. But
I'll
why is
look
it
it up.
purple?
Yeah, that's definitely Australia. I wonder they've just chosen random colors.
I guess I didn't want to use blue because the US and
Yeah. I don't know that they needed to include a picture of the mineral. I don't know that really like gives us anything here. Maybe just for fun, but
Oh.
It's a bunch of gray rocks is some of them have colors.
any of the folks in the data analytics pathway, all these are made in Matplotlib. Just to let your head explode a little bit on that one.
What?
So much is possible.
It is not
possible.
easy to do that, but you can do it.
It can be done.
All right, we'll end on our final one.
Yeah, I don't like the title on this.
Every day or some days by household income.
So this one is a New York Times article plot, and they have what are usually regarded as some of the best like graphic visuals for plotting. So, little background info there. Somebody's got their hand up. Go ahead.
This is a joke mostly, but I feel like it communicates what they're trying to say. Poor people smoke more is what they could call it, basically.
I mean, they're definitely highlighting it. They're trying to point out that a larger percentage of people with low income are smoking every day or some days. That's kind of a everyday or.
Yeah, very odd.
They're not. Yeah, I mean that's
someday.
a big span. Like what are the other categories? Like, is there never? Is there rarely? Like, what are every day, some days? Like, what are the
Some
other
drinking.
options?
That could
Yeah.
be once a month.
Just when I'm drinking, only when I'm
Some
drunk.
people only
That's one of the
smoke
categories.
socially. So
Yeah, right. And then how social are they? Are you social like
Yeah.
me or social like a person who likes people more? I mean, truly, yeah. It's goodness. I don't know that they needed to say that K stands for 1,000. Seems a little rough. Could have just said, something a better way. They don't have the percentage sign only on the top bar. The percentages don't add up to 100.
Yeah, the irony of having the K stands for 1,000, but then not like that's less than.
Yeah.
Or, oh no, it does.
Well,
Okay, it
means
does.
income
No,
less
it
than.
does.
Yeah,
We get there.
but yeah. But it also
Okay.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't tell us. It tells us okay. So this is what household income is. But then who are the people, like how many people per household then? Like it's the entire household income, but there's more than one person in a house. Right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't like this one. There's something about it.
Yeah, it checks a lot of the boxes and it ultimately works, but a lot of the New York Times visuals don't have the X and Y axis, which I hate personally. Also don't love that we have the percent here, but not following suit. But I do love that we ordered them.
I like that they're
Well, it
ordered.
just naturally ordered it itself, but
Oh yeah, I suppose it did. It was a natural order. I mean, it just
yeah, that kind
if
of
you're
tells a
going to
story in
have
its own there.
yeah, if you're going to have percentages, it would be better to include like make it add up to 100. You know, like I don't
Well,
like what are the
crazy.
other
Don't be crazy.
yeah, like what are the other things? You know, if like I guess it's just the percentage of the household. So it's 21% out of 100, 15% out of 100. I've got that. Okay, so they don't have to add up because they're just different holes, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Yeah.
big. Like they stop it at over 100K. Seems kind of the spans are kind of weird. Like they're saying that
Yeah.
over $100,000, there's like no difference between someone who makes 100,000, 110,000 and like 300,000. That's a pretty big difference. That's a way bigger difference than between 70 and 80. You know? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe there's just so few that are like, we gotta lump all that together to make any kind of meaningful data.
Yeah.
But
It is interesting though. I mean, it definitely shows like there's
weird jumps.
probably a correlation between income and smoking. Like perhaps people with much higher income, it's correlated with not smoking as often, which rationally and logically makes sense. It makes sense, whether or not it's like actually true, we're not saying it causes it, but it would make sense,
Yeah.
even though cigarettes are expensive.
Yeah. So this does lead you into like a lot of thinking and moving around the plot and the data and thinking about it. I'd imagine there's a good article accompanying it that made this make a lot more sense. But
do you guys like the color? Would you guys keep the yellow or change the yellow?
I don't know. I kind of get like it turns your walls yellow as a
that's
vibe,
what I think.
but I don't think I would. I don't like it as a color.
They should have just used like a like a pink and like a brown like for like damaged lungs, Oh man. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird color to me. I think it's kind of like
It's very
Yeah, I thought of
diffused.
like the tar situation too, or whatever, like the yellowing of white with it. So it fit, but I don't love it. But it makes you visually think that. So successful in that regard, I thought. And then they've got their source. So good stuff. But that is it for us there.
yeah. Now we just have time for questions,
Mickey?
comments, show off your own visuals,
Oh, sorry, I kept the hand up. My bad.
Oh, no, you're good. I just thought you had a good question. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Anything else anybody wants to add, or? Alrighty then.